Hi everyone, let's go into my low time frame and micro Elliott Wave scenarios on Bitcoin. Starting with the low time frame bullish scenario, which is an alternative scenario where we're looking for a 5-wave structure to the upside in a wave 1, followed by a 3-wave structure in wave 2, corrective, before then a bigger impulsive move to the upside in a wave 3. Now this wave 1 over here has then an extended wave 1, so this move over here is an extended wave 1, and therefore the most common target for wave 2 is between the 0.236 and the 0.382. Then you have wave 3, which doesn't have a target, wave 4, and eventually wave 5 should end inside this white box over here, which it has done, so that is very nice. However, there is one main reason why for me this is an alternative, and that has to do with this wave 2 over here. So if we put wave 2 on the wick here on the left, you can see the wick on the left, it hit the target box for a potential end of wave 2 before the move to the upside. So if we move this wave 2 to the left below this wick, we get a problem with this structure. Because then we have to count this as a wave 1, 2, but how are you going to count this as a wave 3? So if this is a wave 3, you have to do something like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that it? No, because this wave 4 went below the wave 2 over here, so that doesn't work. So then we can maybe do something like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we can make 5 counts or 5 waves over here, but this being a wave 4 compared to this being a wave 2, very, very unlikely, right? Usually wave 4 is longer than wave 2 in time. However, there's no other option to count a nice 5-wave structure inside this wave 3. So that is one big problem. Then if we move it to the right, the problem that we have now is, yeah, we can have a nice 5-wave count over here in a very low time frame, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's fine. But the problem now becomes the length of wave 2 and the end of wave 2. So wave 2 now ended above the target box for a wave 2 over here, even though wave 2 hit it in then a 3-wave structure, right? A 3-wave structure like this, it did hit it, but the end is not inside the target box. The main issue, however, is time. If this is a wave 2 compared to this being a wave 4, you can see that this wave 2 over here is much longer in time compared to this wave 4, which makes it very unlikely, as usually a wave 4 is taking more time to form compared to a wave 2. So this is actually quite a big issue for the bullish scenario. And actually also if you put wave 2 over here, this wave 2 is still longer in time compared to this wave 4. So counting this structure to the upside, it's not a very clear count for an impulsive structure. So that is also why we have some bearish scenarios coming up. Now, if we then look at least at the corrective structure over here, we're then looking, if this is the high of 1, for this to be a wave A, followed by eventually a corrective structure in B, before then a C to the downside. The question then is on the lower time frames, which I'll talk to you about in a second. Those are the micro scenarios. Either this is a 3-wave structure and we now go down for wave C, so then wave B ends over here, or we're going to get something like this, hitting the daily naked point of control and then move to the downside. Now, if this is the end of wave B, you do see that the target area for wave C and then the end of potential wave 2 and then an A, B, C is actually quite nicely positioned, and the daily naked point of control is also inside this most common target area of wave C, and the daily naked point of control being at 26.350. So that is actually quite nice. Also the golden pocket over here, so there's some nice confluence over here for then potentially a move to the upside. If we then go to the first bearish scenario I like to talk to you about, we're thinking about a WXY over here. The reason this is a W is because this then is an expanding flat. This is then an ABC expanding flat, which is following all the rules of Elliott waves, a good structure. So this is then a W, then we have an X, and then we have a 3-wave in a wave Y. So this wave Y is in this particular scenario ending over here above this high, right? This is the most common target area for a wave Y, which has been very nicely respected for then a move to the downside. And this is the very bearish scenario where this then is a wave 1, followed by a wave 2, before then a bigger 3 to the downside, where surely we're going to take this low. The invalidation for this scenario is taking the high over here at about 26.7k. So that is an important level to take into account, that if price is moving to the upside, hits this level, this bearish scenario or very bearish scenario is going to be invalidated. The same problem for 2 applies, that either this is then the high of wave 2 and we're now in a bigger 3 to the downside. My problem, however, is the volume at the moment, which is not really increasing but decreasing actually. Or we go up once more, hit the daily naked point of control for a move to the downside, but more info in the micro scenarios coming. So in this particular scenario, this is the correction downside expected. If we then go to this scenario, which might actually be my preferred scenario, looking at how things are forming at the moment, also locally over here, and the volume that we have going on. So over here, this whole structure is then a W, either this being a WXY or an ABC, doesn't matter. It's a W structure for then eventually a corrective wave X to the downside, where we do again have the naked point of control at 26.3K for an interesting support level, and also the golden pocket over here. Now, what is interesting though for this potential wave W is if you pull the fib from the low to the high over here, so then we're thinking about an ABC structure, then you have to pull the fib from the low over here to the high, which is the fib that you see over here. However, if this is a WXY, you have to officially pull the fib from this low. And if I would do that and actually move up the Fibonacci to that low over there, you can see that now the daily naked point of control is very close to the 886 and the 786. And if price would move below the 886, it's quite likely we're going to grab this low as well in this scenario. So yeah, it does depend where you pull the pivot for this Fibonacci pull. But in the end, what we basically look for is a move again to the upside. So we then have a big three-wave structure in a wave X. Then this is again a wave A, followed then by a three-wave structure, maybe hitting the daily naked point of control before moving down or moving down already. That is the difficult thing about this range over here. This structure over here is very complex, but eventually we then expect to move to the downside. I think that if price is going to move down to the daily naked point of control right now, then we need to look for a move like this in this particular scenario, or if we might swing failure these lows, which I got over here. So if we're going to take these lows, take them and then move up, then we can get something like this as well. So then if we look to the upside, we have a target area for wave Y. Let me actually clean up the chart a little bit as well. So the target area for wave Y is then we have a WXY, and if X would finish around the daily naked point of control at 26,350, the most common target area for wave Y is over here between the 1 and the 1.236, which sits between 28.2K and 28.7K, which also includes the swing failure pattern, or at least the highs, I should actually say, over here. And that is important because these are the highs from the news event that we had past week, where when the news happened, price pushed to the upside. We saw a lot of absorption on the CVD as well, for then a move to the downside, which went impulsively, as you can see. So there's definitely some liquidity resting above these highs for maybe a grab and then continuation to the downside. If we then go to the micro scenario, so then again, this is something I'm definitely looking at, might be my preferred scenario. And then if we go to the micro scenarios, trying to make sense of this horizontal structure, which to be honest guys, it is very complex over here. This is then a wave A in this scenario. So this is either a wave A, a wave C, or a wave 1, right? If this is an impulsive structure, it can only be those three options. Now a wave C for me is kind of invalidated because this C is very, very long. So I'm looking at this to be an A or a wave 1. And in this scenario, it's a wave A, followed then by potentially a wave B, and then a C to the downside. Now in this scenario, if this is a three-wave structure in a wave A, we then have a three-wave structure in a wave B, and then we're looking for an impulsive structure C to the upside. So we're thinking about an expanding flat in this blue wave B. The most common target for the white wave B over here is between the 1.236 and the 1.38, which also includes taking this low, which I think is very nice to move to the downside, take the liquidity below the lows, close above, and then move to the upside. And that could be a potential swing failure pattern trade, where you then put the stop loss below the low, and if price is closing above the level 26,740, that could be your entry, and then we'd be looking for potentially a move to the upside, where the main target area will be between the two 1.618s that you see over here, which is basically between 27.4K and 27.5K. And now look at this. If I then open a naked point of controls, you can see that the daily naked point of control over here is very close to the 1.618. So that can be very, very nice indeed. So this is a very interesting scenario where, again, I'm going to clean up the chart just a little bit over here, where if price is going to continue to the downside, then this scenario over here is not valid, okay? So we definitely want to see take the liquidity, close, move up. That's what we're looking for in this particular scenario. So it's very easily invalidated. If over here we move down, this scenario is invalidated. And the second one that I have for you on the micro is that then the high of B or 2 is already in. This is a wave 1 or a wave A, followed by a 3-wave structure WXY in a 2 or B. Now usually a wave 2 is a zigzag, which is a 5-3-5 wave move, but that is clearly not the case looking at this horizontal structure. And also this high is lower than this high, so that makes more sense in a WXY scenario. Still in a WXY, usually I like to see the high taken, but you know, in this scenario, this is then the high of wave 2 and wave B. It might fit better with a wave B if this is a WXY, for then eventually a wave C or a wave 3 to the downside. And the main thing over here, I wrote it down as well, is the volume. So the volume over here, not too impressive so far. Of course, we're moving to the downside. You can see some spikes, but if this is like a wave 3, you know, it's not that great, not that impressive just yet. So we have to wait and see how that is going to develop. You could put potentially, and I'm already thinking about questions I might get, wave 2 over here or wave B over here as well. The main problem I have then is if this is a wave A or a wave 1, or in this scenario wave 1, wave 2 over here, then we have to look at this to be another wave 1, 2, and then we get the typical 1, 2, 1, 2 problem that I explained in many videos, where this second wave 1 is not taking the low of the first wave 1. And what I like to see is this being a 1, 2, then another 1, 2 before a bigger 3, where the second one is taking the low of the first one, which is not the case. So at the moment, as it stands, I would really enjoy seeing this scenario where we take the lows, move up, grab the daily naked point of control, and then move down. Maybe some bearish divergences here on the CVD as well. That could be quite interesting. And on the, I guess, a little bit zoomed out scenario, I would like a WXY scenario, to be honest, where we're going to extend a little bit, like a WX and then eventually a Y, take the liquidity, maybe even reach the target box over here between 28.9K and 29.2K. So yeah, it's just very complex counting, but nonetheless, I hope this video was helpful or valuable to you. Please check out the macro and high time frame video if you're interested. And for now, thanks for watching and subscribing, and I will see you at the next one. Bye bye.